And hello, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in. You are watching The Vuyo Show. We are coming to you from New York City. And as we do every single episode, I bring you inspiring and igniting individuals with unique stories to share with us, to give us perspective on the world and perhaps help us, channel ourselves into the best version of ourselves that we possibly can do. Now, New York City is one of the most thriving cities around the world. And this next guest has had a pulse on the world of entrepreneurship in this city and the country at large. I can't wait for you to meet him, and I'm going to ask you to please sit back, relax, and enjoy the next couple of minutes with myself and the one and only Medina.
I'm here for the vibe. I'm here for the intro music. Thank you for having me, my love. I am great. Thank you for having me here. And thank you for all of the beautiful people you introduce us through your media vehicle. I'm always left at the end of a show with gems and with kind of renewed inspiration for my own work. So thank you for doing that, for being a conduit for that positive energy.
I love that. I thank you so much for coming. I mean, there's so much that I said when we were coming up into the studio. I was like, don't tell me anything. I want us to talk about all of it on the show. So we have so much to unpack today because I've been curious. And that's really the people that I sit down with here on the show are people that I'm curious about because I find a light in them and a spark in them that I have questions about. And I know our audience as well might be asking themselves similar questions about, who you are and what really led you into this journey of entrepreneurship, speaking, and all these amazing things that you get to do. And so, yeah, I saw you for the first time speaking at a panel, and I was like, I see all of them, but that one, the depth in which he communicates, the command of the space in which he understands, there's something in there. Where was that again? Remind me of that particular event.
We were in New York, weren't we?
On your walk?
We were in Newark, right?
Yes,
we were at a Tech United, was it?
I think so.
It was a tech conference for sure, and we were talking about spaces and the brilliance of urban cities with an innovation. That's what I remember. And I remember seeing you, and your smile was super bright. And I was just like, I love us. When I get the opportunity to speak is one thing, because then I feel like we need spotlights for our work. But when I see us in the crowd and I get to connect, that's what gives me life.
Yeah. And when you are in spaces like those, as I said, when I was kind of highlighting it, there was a command in which you are articulating within. Do you ever get nervous going on stage? Do you ever get jitters and...
All the time. Every single time, whether I'm on a show or a podcast, whether it's network, we were just recently on Channel 7 and Channel 5 and Channel 9 and PBS. Every time I get nervous, not so much I think for myself, but more to make sure that I'm repping us right? Yes. Because every opportunity we get a spotlight on us, it's not just our win. I think it's a win for all of us. And so I think that's when I get nervous, is I want to really speak to how brilliant we are and how diverse we are. So yes, nervous all the time. Except with you. With you, I'm so excited and just at ease.
Please be comfortable here. We just love comfort on this show. And it's also, again, from a place of curiosity. And I remember hearing you speak. And again, back to the command thing, right? The command in which you spoke from was the knowledge of representation that you were so well versed on, right? It was like you knew exactly what our needs and our desires are as a community and why we should have someone like yourself speaking up on them. What does that mean to you? What does representation, what does voicing out and being a voice from a marginalized point of view and standing up in that regard?
It is legacy work, in my opinion. I take it so seriously that when I am speaking, I have done probably 5 times more listening, because when you are safeguarding the culture and when in the work that I do through Equal Space, when you're really protecting and creating physical space for so many intersectionalities of us, places that I will never understand, right? I'm a cis male, right? I'm black, I'm brown, I'm queer, but I will never understand the intricacies and the intersectionalities of being a black woman. So for me, when I'm in these spaces and I'm talking about the brilliance of us, I have to do the daily due diligence of sitting and listening. And that is a powerful tool when you can sit and understand and fight in empathy for an experience that you won't have. I think there needs to be more of that. But I've done so much listening, whether it's to the intersectionality of being immigrant and trans, or what is it to be black and queer. So many times those experiences and those protections and the needs of those intersections are overlooked. And
Yeah.
my job, I feel, is to create intention behind and around those minutes and those moments of your life that
Yeah.
you're experiencing them in layers, right? You don't experience them individually.
Yeah.
And so that's when I'm like, have I listened? Have I looked? Do I know my facts? And I'm well versed. And if I'm put in these positions, can I also say, I'm not the correct person to tap on that
Yeah.
story. But let me tell you who is, and refer them to the right person who can speak and
Nice.
advocate.
Nice. You can sense that from your dialogue on stage. And I'm starting there specifically within this conversation because that's how I encountered you for the first time, right? And that's my knowledge of who you are. I can't divorce that from what I saw on that stage. And I remember vividly there was a number of accomplished people, who in their own right, as you said, know from their own experiences, but you use the word listening, right? And it's in this time and age where everyone has something to say, there's a lot less of listening. You know what I mean? How do you go about practicing that exercise to the degree that it enables you to be well-versed, to be knowledgeable in topics and conversations?
So there's a couple things we have to do, and I was actually writing to this morning to my team. Hearing and listening are different. I believe because of our experiences, so many of us really have a core need to be heard, because we aren't, and because we're so underestimated, and because we're in environments that tell us no, or we're fighting for space in these places that sometimes we're fighting amongst each other in those spaces. And so I need to really center myself in a place where I'm like, I don't think it's necessary for me personally to be heard right now, but I think it's really important for me to hold space for you. I'm never lessened by that. And I think a lot of people put themselves in a place where, like, if they aren't heard in a particular moment, then they feel lessened. And I am more than faithful that I know I'm going to be given my time to speak to my personal narrative. But most of the time I'm booked to speak, it's to talk about equal space and why so much need exists around, people of color and queer individuals and founders, that I am speaking for them. And so I'm able to give up that need to be heard in that moment because I firmly believe it'll come to me. Now, if you see it, even in the content creation industries, the sheer multitude of shows and podcasts that exist, even IG and TikTok, individuality, I think, is a beautiful thing. But I do feel it's a real big outcry to be heard. When I provide space for people to be heard, though, there becomes a really beautiful bond that comes out of it, and we're able to dialogue, and it becomes a two-sided coin that I'm like, great, now we're really seeing and hearing each other, and sometimes the breakthroughs come in the hearing them.
Yeah. And the progressive dialogue and the impactful dialogue comes from that. But I can also imagine having had an experience like growing up in New York enables that. Because it's a melting pot of people from various different places and spaces and ideologies. So would you say that kind of plays a role into that?
Oh, my upbringing, I am so proud. I'm Brooklyn born and bred. And I tell everybody, born in Brooklyn, made in Newark, because in Brooklyn, everyone has a hustle. Everyone has a dream. Everyone is in the same terrain as me, was trying to make it through and trying to really get themselves off. And in certain instances, by us hustling together and getting each other's moments so that they could have that sunshine, that really enabled me to understand how you don't have to give up your individuality in collaboration. I think Brooklyn taught me that things can be beautiful and things can be ugly. And probably, as my daddy says, not all motivation needs to be positive. So
Oh, that's
Brooklyn,
deep.
I mean, Brooklyn gave me some good lessons. I take them to this day. And so, yeah, Brooklyn definitely armed me. I knew if I made it here, like, it's so cheesy. If you make it here, you really can't make it anywhere. And I've been in a multitude of places, like, internationally. And I think that part of my Brooklyn life is always how I persevere.
Yeah. And who would you say was the first person that heard you that now, because again, what we see now is a culmination of things from your background or your past, etc. So you're speaking of listening to others and hearing others, but that should come from you also then being heard. Or maybe not, right? So who would you say was the first person that comes to mind that you felt like this, I'm being heard?
So I have to say it's my co-founder. My co-founder, Ralphie Roman, was the first person who saw the value in what I wanted to create, and rode with me now for 2 companies. So he heard me when I wanted to create what is a creative agency, and I was complaining, and I was like, I worked for some very large companies, but still didn't feel we were hitting the mark, and didn't feel that like creators of color were being valued in company agency structures the way I would do it. And he heard me, and he was like, why don't you start your own? And I'm like, we ain't got money like that. I was living paycheck to paycheck like everybody is. And I was like, that's just not in my cards. And he was like, because you say it isn't. But he was the first one to hear me and see me and feel value, and also put in equity and time and money into building it up. And to date, we own 2 companies together now. And it's been a beautiful, joyous ride, because you need that.
Yeah.
You need those moments. I give so much space and I want so many people to win, but you need your own like kitchen cabinet, as one of my sisters say, to come to and rail at and say how unfair it all is and what have you. And so he's that for me, and I'm that for him.
Yeah, I love that. And it paints a perspective now to me as someone who, as curious as I'm sure our audience is as well, of then even the space that you went on to create exemplifies what that feeling was for you, that you were able to replicate it for others.
Oh, they're like, how did you create Equal Space? Equal Space is the space my co-founder and I wish we had when we wanted to start our first company. It is our love letter to our people. And every nuance of how we create space for our community of members called Spacers is intentional. It's just expanded because as we've grown the team have added notes, and the team have added their own letters to what make it great. But like most founders of color, we created Equal Space to serve what wasn't there for us, and to solve for X, to solve for the inequity and the demeaning environments, the lessening spaces we have to enter in order to get ahead, the structures that were not built for us or by us. And Equal Space is that sliver, that rare air that you get to breathe, where you are instantly loved and welcomed home. And from the floorboards up, the music, the food, it celebrates the diaspora. It warmly hugs you, that you feel like you don't have to code switch or look a certain way. And those are struggles me and my co-founder and our whole team have struggled through. Identity, pronouns, your queerness, your blackness, like those core things that make you so wonderful. Equal Space embraces and celebrates. And that's really what it was. It's like, what would it be if I felt a place that just, even if it's a room, could just exist for all my people?
And they say, as cliche as it may sound, like entrepreneurship and business that comes from a pain point, because a lot of us have those pain points, but then someone who actively stands up and decides to help solve that problem speaks for all of us, right? And tell us about that dialogue and that session where you and your co-founder were sitting down and drafting this plan or this idea down. What day was it, and where were you guys when that happened?
Ooh, we are 9 years into this journey. This was not, so Equal Space was not on like the brand agenda or the business plan. We came to Newark to do our work as an agency for some very prominent members in the state. One of which was Cory Booker. And we were doing this work in Newark and being intentional about coming into this beautiful black city to not do what happened in Brooklyn, which was a harsh gentrifying factor to our people.
Yeah.
We came in and we were like activating art events and music events and creative convenings and doing these things all for free to make sure that we were really weaving into the fabric of this great Black historical city. And what happened was we had square footage. We signed a lease. We had an office. And we started giving space because back then, Newark is very different now. But back then, there wasn't a space for you to like take a meeting. There wasn't a space to have, a coffee and to really feel community. All these entrepreneurs and these techies were kind of floating and they were engaging us. And we were just giving space. We had so much space to give. We're just giving it to them for free. And then one day our Verizon bill and our electric bill started coming back and we started realizing this community does not work for us and they are doing their own thing and like good on them. Like, this is great. And so my co-founder came to me and he was like, you got to figure this out. And so we have been a part of co-working spaces, all the usual suspects.
Yeah.
And we never liked the feeling like where you have to walk in and kind of set your value or you got to flex and like to carve space and respect from our counterparts. We'll leave it there. And I was like, well, what happens if we did X, Y, and Z? And what if this was like, you could show up as you are and you could be hood or you could be bougie or you could be refined or you could be rough or you could be, seed A and series A funding, or you could just be in an idea mode and feel cool. And he was like, what would that look like? And that's when I started to write really down on paper equal space, which comes from the saying, there's nothing but space and opportunity for all. And from there, we started as a pop-up, and then we really, not till the last year and a half, we've really been independent and guerrilla our entire experience. So Equal Space started that way. I got down to it and was like, what it would look like, but it's grown way past anything we could have imagined.
Yeah. And what was the first business? Because you mentioned that this was your second business. What was the first? Is this an agency, you said?
Yeah. Okay. So it was a creative strategies agency, and we work mainly with like global brands and like philanthropic foundations, like Rockefeller Foundation and Senator Booker. We're a joy to work with, but we worked in the like social impact space to create strategies and designs and campaigns to help our people. So still at the root of the work was always impact for our people. Like during COVID pandemic, we worked on a health equity campaign and we translated it into every major language to get our people in for COVID treatment and to drive numbers down. And we did that work with the Rockefeller Foundation and United Way. So we do that. We did that work. That agency's 14 years old now. And from that wealth building that we did, Equal Space came out of that.
Got it. So there was a transfer that then kind of happened from, but also understanding some of the desires and the needs of the community, which I guess what birthed Equal Space as well. Yeah,
our listening devices are hella strong. So our team, half of the Equal Space team, is actually interfacing with our members, who we call spacers, on a bi-weekly, daily, monthly basis. We're consistently listening to their needs and what dragons they have to slay, and what's going well, what's not going well, what resources don't they have, and we use our combined networks to bring those opportunities for them. We find them grants. We celebrate them when they're winning. We hug them out when they're finding things aren't going the way they want. And we find the rally economics around that as well. So our memberships really become flexible, supportive structures and not draining structures from them. Yeah.
If someone was to ask you, what is the business model of Equal Spaces? Like, what is the business? How do you go about explaining it? Apart from it's like a space, but at the core, what would you say it is?
So that's the part where I'd be challenging people. So I'm not gonna lie to you. When someone's like, what is Equal Space? I'm like, you're never gonna know unless you walk through the doors.
Nice.
I am a writer, a content creator, a marketer, a master strategist. I know how to market. And still to this day, through this journey, I could not tell you in one fell swoop what Equal Space is. I can tell you we are a share space and incubator in the co-working industry that provides space from a desk to suites. We provide content creation suites from podcast studios to multimedia studios and event spaces. Nice. We have convening spaces for groups of 4 and groups of 75. And we mostly provide community around founders of color and queer founders and women-led ventures in an effort to break generational curses and wealth build. And we do that predominantly through space.
I love that. Right? That was just like I told you at that event. You were dropping these bars as well.
I'm trying to still hone it. We're semifinalists for the Pharrell Williams Black Ambition Prize.
Wow.
And so I'm constantly being coached now on what this pitch is going to look like. If we get to the main stage, I want to be in fighting form when we do this, because the prize could be up to $1 million, and we're working hard. Equal Space needs resources.
Yeah, but also for the people and for the mission. Right, as they say, we need resources to take a mission forward, because how else are we able to do that, right?
Oh, that's been the learning curve for me. We just opened our second campus in Newark. So we had one campus, 20,000 square feet, 3 floors, and that we were considered one of the largest in the country at that point, as far as being Black and brown and queer owned. And now we're opening a 50,000 square foot campus in Newark, which is in partnership with like Audible, Wells Fargo, Prudential, the city, and the state, to create an innovation hub for founders of color. Yes. And so that's an expansion of it. And so we need resources, and we need to be unashamed about saying we deserve the resources. We're standing up a $5.5 million campus for our people. And so these corporate entities that are my partners and other entities, we need to be able to walk in there and go, we deserve this funding so we can make more impact. And now that's my new charge, is like, I'm looking to bring at least 3 more equal spaces to different cities across the country.
And around the world.
Yes.
Around the world.
Imagine a global plan. That'd be so dope.
I'm here for that. I'm here for the global. One in South Africa.
I mean, you're global, Brazil. So that makes all the sense.
And if you were to think about some of the things that you've heard as challenges, because we spoke just briefly now about we must not be ashamed, right, to speak up on the things that we need and we deserve and that we require to drive these businesses forward and these projects forward. What are some of the things that you've heard that entrepreneurs, brown, Black and queer, etc., entrepreneurs, that they've found as some of the struggles that they've had? Would you say you've identified as a space?
So, in my experience now at Equal Space, being 9+, I think what I've experienced is it's in 2 buckets. Mm-hmm. So, yes, there is a wealth gap. So let's address that first and foremost. I think communities of color, we become uncomfortable when we start talking about the finances, whether it be personal or the business's finances, and start talking about being unashamed to talk about wealth building, being unashamed to say, I run a positive business model, or talking about I need X amount of dollars in order to get this to a certain level. Yeah. And I think our counterparts don't have that problem. And we do, because there's a certain amount of personal pride wrapped up in your business model. So for the wealth side, I think some of the things at Equal Space we try to address is your personal wealth relationship, and not being ashamed to talk about your credit score, your personal bank accounts, and how will we make those healthier, and how that knowledge then applies to your business's wealth practice and how it will grow. Yeah. So we bring in advisors who look like us, whether it's for the creative economy, or who look at like us, who are successful VC or angel investors, and we let them tell you what the game looks like about finances. And we do so in an unashamed and proud way, but also allowing you space to share where you are with no shame applied to you, right? Now, the knowledge gap. The game of entrepreneurship is filled with accessible points, grants, loans, building relationships with financial institutions, looking at who can be an investment or a partner. That knowledge of doing that in a way that protects you is something that I find communities of color struggle with, because we are so severely taken from, because we are taken advantage of, because we're in environments that are harsh to us. We protect in a way that's so natural that it takes a lot of work and effort to listen and hear them on where the core root of why they are hesitant to do something. It's the fear of failure and the fear of being taken advantage of. So we bring in people, blueprints, who have either failed and are of color, or had a moment that was a real pinnacle moment that that could have ended them, and it didn't. It built a new version of them. And so wealth gap, knowledge gap, that's the community aspect of Equal Space. That's really our secret sauce, because you can get a space anywhere, but to be in a space that's going to give you all of that for free. All of our programming is 100% free to the community and to our members. So we don't gatekeep. And we work very hard. Shout out to Kelly, Angie, and Mark, who rally around creating programming that's not only good for you, but also has some sauce. We don't do boring stuff. Like we pop off, we have a great time, we have huge attendance rates, but
Nice.
like that's what I think the two buckets I want Equal Space always to bring to the table for our members.
Wealth gap as well as knowledge, right? How do we even define wealth? I'm just, again, curiosity coming up now. As you said, our counterparts are unashamedly open about conversations about wealth. Is there a different definition for wealth for us as a people, or what would your response be in that?
You know, there's a couple things. Like there's the flossy side of wealth for us, right? There's the cars and the travel,
Yeah.
and like I want a spot that looks like this, and I want us to be proud of attaining those things. But those things come from like a solid foundation. So then being unashamed to talk about, right, but what's the savings account, and what's the ability to keep your overhead, and what's your savings for? So it can't be just for the flossy stuff. It has to be redundancies for us to have, are we moving toward a mortgage? Do we want to own? Do we not want to own? I think we have to create a wonderful playing field where people can state what they want and we can add to it.
Yeah.
And it's like, fine, you want to hit them private jets, go off, sis. I want that for you too. I just want to make sure that, you have your bag on the side, and that you are autonomous and powerful in your wealth, and that there's wealth flowing to you, and that multiple pipelines of wealth aren't hard. We have a lot of founders who are also, their dream is a side hustle right now on top of their full-time job. We have members of our team who are parents. And so finding flexibility on getting them there happens to be our jam. Like we can get in on that. Like, what do you want to do? And we work with partners who help them get there. Just recently, I'm just so proud of them. We have two wonderful members in our space. One is called Trap Art, which is a beautiful lifestyle brand. And it's helmed by Mustafa. And then we have Galaxy Studios, which is helmed by Cash. And they just received a portion of a $3 million grant from the city of Newark in an effort to do more education and more support for youth in those industries. And it made me so proud because they're wealth building while doing social good. So the two aren't divorced. So even if you want to do well but you still want to do good, the two things can happen. And I'm an example of that. Equal Space is a very wonderful, strong model doing great good, but we're a profitable model. And we do that even though we're an equity space. So those are kind of the places we explore with our people around wealth building. And we let them start where they are with no judgment.
Yeah.
And then we try to say, cool, you want that Mercedes? I want that for you too. What can we add to that to make sure that Mercedes turns into two Mercedes? And there's a certain amount of wealth acumen you have to have behind you to get there. And I've also given myself as the personal journey. So I am not perfect. I have had my own credit history issues. Entrepreneurship was very bumpy. I was using my personal credit and all these other things. I had no savings. I share with them unabashedly because that's not where I am today, but it's because I humbled myself to listen to other financial experts who were of color, who showed me the way.
And you said something so beautiful earlier on in the conversation about the word legacy, right? And do you hear that a lot in the space? Do entrepreneurs speak about that a lot? Because I know it's personal to you, but is that something that's currently flowing in conversations around between entrepreneurs of color and those who are from marginalized groups? What did you say on that?
Yes, but they don't use the word legacy. So I'll bring up Mustafa, the founder and creative behind Trap Art.